Neuroscientist and educator Dr Jared Cooney Horvath returns to Magnify Matters for a fast, practical check-in on what lifts learning from knowledge-rich curriculum and whole-class instruction to cutting through the noise on EdTech. In conversation with Tim Edwards, Jared reflects on Sandhurst's momentum since his 3-day intensive earlier this year and shares a preview of his new book, The Digital Delusion. Together, Tim and Jared explore what knowledge-rich low-variance looks like in real classrooms, why whole-class instruction builds empathy, synchrony, and deeper understanding, how background knowledge speeds new learning and boosts creativity, practical ways to align teachers, students, and parents around the same learning language, where EdTech helps, where it harms, and how to keep people at the centre, and what's next for Magnify Sandhurst in 2026. Whether you're in a classroom or leading a school, this episode offers clear principles, memorable stories, and next steps you can use tomorrow. Now join us as we magnify what truly matters in education.
Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, thanks so much for joining us on Season 2 of Magnify Matters.
Yay! It's a pleasure to be here as always. I miss you guys, and I'm excited to catch up, see how everything's going.
Jared, straight into things. You impacted us enormously in Sandhurst. Somehow you engaged 3,000 people unbelievably well over 3 days. Congrats again on that outstanding work with us, and it's great to have you back.
Thank you. And it's all the content. I always say I get to teach the fun stuff. If it was 3 days on higher order calculus, I'm sure it would have been a lot trickier. But the brain stuff, the learning stuff, that's all our wheelhouse. So I'm lucky. I get to teach that.
And how do you find it delivering from your location there? Where are you?
You know me, when I'm in the groove, I don't even notice what's going on. It's the before and after. When you finish and you're feeling good and you look around and you're still in a shack in Portland, Oregon. I'm sure, I'd rather be on a balcony overlooking the Amalfi Coast or something, but we take what we got.
It's a good place, and you've done a great job from that location, so thanks again. I'm just going to quickly go back to April. And I know it was a while ago, and you've got a few updates for us since, or many updates as to what's been happening in your world since then. But just back to our world in Sandhurst, key takeaways for you from those 3 days that you thought were fundamental items to be delivered to such a broad audience.
I'll get to content, I guess, in a second. I just want to say that the engagement itself is the biggest takeaway for me. It shows that you're not just saying empty words. You have a clear vision and you've got buy-in from your team. People are there and they're willing to engage with it, which is huge. When organizations try and make big changes, the fight is just to get 90% of the people to even understand the language, just to not say no immediately. And you guys have already crossed that barrier. So I'm so impressed with you in the fact that everyone is on board saying, let's do more. And I think for me, I don't know, I keep coming back to that idea. The very first thing we look at is that the concept of story, of narrative kind of driving our perception of the world. I think you guys have the right narrative and it kind of fits in with this. And I love that as everyone's learning evolves and as they do more things, engage with more of these different groups that you guys are working with, their narrative is going to evolve and they're going to see things differently. And I always something I tell my students is when you graduate after 4 years of college, I want you to go back and reread the very first essay you wrote. And it's going to be embarrassing. It's going to be confronting. It's going to be cringeworthy at times because you're going to be like, how did I ever think that? But if you didn't write that essay, you wouldn't have gotten to where you are in 4 years. I want to do the same thing here. And in a couple more years, I want everyone to look back on your very first thoughts of science of learning and application into practice. And you're going to be like, how did I ever think that? But just know that all those thoughts you're having now, that narrative, is allowing you to evolve and to drive the narrative you're going to have in 3 years. So I just love, always look back, keep your eye on the prize. Just know you won't even notice when your mind is changing. If you can look back, reflect, that's when you can get some good glimpses of how far you've kind of come along.
Just on that, we were lucky enough this week to have a day with 140 of our learning leaders in Shepparton and a couple of stories to share with you. But one of them you just reminded me is at the end of the day, we did some reflections from the start of the year to now.
Yeah.
What have we done? You know, that whole thing where people get so busy and so caught up in the right now. We took a moment to reflect and we used our mini whiteboards and people needed to write what they are most proud of that's new in their place this year. 140 of our school leaders across 51 different schools were able to note what they were most proud of in our work. And then they had to flip it, chin it, and share it with their tables and celebrate that. And we saw some staggering things, from really practical to some really deep personal items. Constant through it was a theme of their learning. And exactly like you're saying, I'm learning more, I'm learning more, I'm learning more. And, in 12 months, 18 months, I'll say, well, that's just what I do.
You're absolutely right. We just keep pushing forward, that we sometimes forget to say, hey, good stuff is happening. And if you can take a moment, gratitude and celebration, do it. That's never a bad thing.
You do need to know, Jared, the impact you've had on Sandhurst. You know you've had an impact when your name is used, only your Christian name, and the whole room understand who the heck we're talking about 7 months later. So on Tuesday in the room in Shepparton, a presenter from Teachwell did a fabulous job, some amazing learning for our people. And the hand went up, said, excuse me, Jared said. And credit to Katie, the question was great. The work was complimentary. It fitted well, but it was just a point of clarification from a sample of one of the room. But everyone in the room knew, hey, you're talking about Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath.
Who's Madonna and Jared? Here we go. I'll take the one.
So when you are able to come out and visit us in Sandhurst, the red carpet will be rolled out at every school. And we seriously can't wait for you to do that at some point in time, for you and your family to come and say good day, because you must have done something right. And I know that you did. But to have that response and that uptake. And as an office, we continue to have people say, just reading through Jared's notes again, or just had a look at these things post Jared's session with us. And so that's constant. And we've developed an instructional model that's largely built around lots of the basis that came from those 3 days' work. And that'll be something that's here hopefully for a long time in Sandhurst. So thanks again.
Good message, right time too. It shows you guys cultivated the soil, everything was ready, and I'm lucky we hit at the right moment.
Jared, since then, we're going to talk about your book in a little while, but from a LME global perspective, just give the listeners a bit of an update as to some of the things that you've been doing to remain in contact with us in Sandhurst.
Yes, I know we wanted to do some work with the parents. You've got 3 angles, right? You've got teachers, you got students, you got parents. If you can triangulate all 3 of them with the same basic language and ideas, that's when you're going to see real movement. So we wanted to do some stuff with parents. We figured the easiest way was going to, rather than just try to find the right night for every school, is let's just film those. Let's make those kind of available on demand as needed. So we've got kind of 3 sessions for parents, looking at memory, how can I help my kids kind of study, looking at development, what's going on in my kids' brains from primary years all the way up through secondary, with a real focus on teenagers, kind of what's going on there. And then also we bring in, of course, this idea of tech and what we can think of there. And so I think that's been a good kind of outreach for the parent angle. And then for the students, and we're doing similar with the senior year students, we're taking a look at the learning blueprint. Is how does learning work through the lens of what does that mean for me as a student? How can I drive my study at home? How can I drive my practices in the classroom? How can I prep for college going forward? So I think that's where together we all got the teacher angle, and now we're trying to work on making sure we get kind of those 2 other groups, the parents and the students, on board too. And so slowly but surely we're making good strides.
And if you're a listener out there in our schools or a parent at home and you're wondering, oops, I missed that, rest assured it's okay. We've got access to those resources in 2026 as well. So thanks for your partnership and providing those. And we know that they'll have a positive impact on our students and their families. I just wanted to update you. I'm not sure if we have one of our learning leaders, Craig Simpson. He's been on this show before. He did a power of work post your sessions. It did come up from our senior teachers to say, how do we apply this for content dense VCE delivery? Surely there's some work that we can do in this space. So Craig led 3 sessions for our VCE teachers that were unbelievably well attended. And again, at this time of year, as we keep the kids that are completing their Year 12 exams in our thoughts and prayers, we know that, again, some of the impact of your work and through Craig's great skills and leadership, that extended to that space as well.
It's really interesting how when people learn this stuff, if you teach primary years, you start to filter it through primary lens. If you teach middle, in the US, we call it middle, like 6 through 8, you start to filter it there. But I think you're absolutely right, is 9 through 12, especially those last 2 years. That's where if you really can kind of lock some of this stuff down, and if the students can lock some of this stuff down, that's when hopefully you can make kind of a bigger dent there and make that last 2 year crunch a little bit easier on everyone.
Give us a quick update, Jared, about how a knowledge-rich curriculum year on year on year might impact senior school students.
What's the biggest predictor of learning speed is always going to be background knowledge. What a person comes in with always ends up determining how far they're going to go on that kind of next level. And so you can see how a curriculum that kind of builds upon itself, that locks down foundations year on year on year, is just going to make the next year that much faster to kind of breeze through. I always say, think about languages, right? I'm learning Italian now, still really bad at it, still 1B. And that's after years of work, almost to intermediate level now. Now flip that. I have a buddy who lives in Melbourne, Sergio. Before he even heard that I wanted to learn Italian, he spoke Portuguese, English, Spanish, Hebrew, and one other wacky language. And so he's like, cool, I want to learn Italian with you. He's fluent now. And me, I'm still struggling. And so from a higher order perspective, most people would look at that and say, oh, he's good at languages, you're bad at them. He's smart, you're dumb. No, he just came in with so much more background knowledge that it could tack new knowledge on so much easier, and he had a way to filter all this stuff. So that's why I think a knowledge-rich curriculum, which focuses on locking foundations down and then building on them year on year on year, that's where you're going to get that speed and development that most people imagine when they think of higher order school, secondary.
Thanks, Jared. I deliberately asked you that because, as you know, our knowledge-rich, low-variance curriculum with OCA is a fundamental part of our work in Magnify Sandhurst. And just to have a different voice explain that in another way, I think is really, really valuable. And you would be pleased to know that we partnering with Melbourne Archdiocese Catholic School and OCA and are developing quite a robust and ambitious primary school science curriculum that's going to be rolled out next year. And the fundamentals and the foundation learning that's there and probably quite new for a number of our schools to then take into secondary, where we're doing the low variance knowledge rich at year 7 and 8 next year, and that'll flow beyond further. We're really excited about how that plays out.
I love it. And for anyone who's worried about those kind of higher order skills, and I'm sure I shared this before, but repetition never really hurts, is knowledge is the foundation for everything that comes after it. All higher order skills are built on lower level knowledge. You can't avoid that. And so we've got the PISA exam, the ATAR, and a lot of people yell at those that say, you know what, those are useless tests because they just test surface knowledge, which is absolutely true. They absolutely do test surface knowledge. But you got to remember, without that surface knowledge, there is nothing else. So although it only tests surface knowledge, it gives you a really deep insight into how far they're going to be able to take and use their learning. So it might be narrow, but that narrow gives you good insight that you need. And I think that's where the knowledge-rich curriculum has always pushed those tests through the roof. And so that's a good sign that, look, you're doing the right work to get to the stage where things like creativity, critical thinking, meaningful communication will start to emerge just through the knowledge itself.
And that aligns beautifully, as you've explained it then, to our instructional model work as well. And if you're listening in our school as a teacher or as a parent and you want to know more about that, have a chat to your relevant school and teachers. Again, that's a perfect chance to look at a different set of words in relation to our instructional model. So we'd encourage everyone to do that.
Did I tell you about the PISA creativity exam? I must have, right?
You did. You shared that with our people online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I just keep coming back to it. When everyone's like, who's the most creative country? Singapore. What? Yeah, they're also the ones with the most knowledge. I was just looking at that graph again today. I always go back to it. It's one of the most blatantly obvious line graphs you'll ever see. 0.92 correlation between how well did you do on the test, how well did you do on the knowledge test, and how well did you do on the creativity test. Anyone willing to look, the message is very clear there.
Thank you, Jared. In your own world, you've been unbelievably busy. You touched on it, and it was probably the highest peak, if you like, of interest and concern and challenge to the audience over the 3 days earlier this year, and that's this whole thing of technology and the impact of technology. I heard a panel member last week or the week before at an event I was at call tech a attention thief. That was the term that they used. You've written a book on it. Tell us about it.
Oh, the Digital Delusion. How classroom technology harms our kids' learning and how we can help them thrive again. You all know the John Haidt Anxious Generation. I don't want to bore anyone, but Here's the details. So he has a Substack group where he posts all new things. And I just reached out to him and said, can I just write something on EdTech? Because I have something I think it's important to say. He said, yeah, put it on a Substack. Ended up being the most read piece in his Substack in the same year he released his book. So he's like, man, there's something here. I think this is the next thing. If smartphones were step one, this is going to be step two. And I decided, okay, let's write that book. And so 4 months of putting my head down and crunching later, we're ready to launch. So that'll come out on December 7th. And it's like, I don't want to blow sunshine here. Like I like my first two books, popular books. I like everything I do, but I'm not an idiot. I know it's meaningful for teachers. It's meaningful for people who care. This is the first thing I've written that I think is important for everyone. I don't think this is just important for parents, for policymakers, for politicians. There's a part of me that's finally kind of proud of something I've done because I think this isn't just good, it's meaningful. And so hopefully we will get some traction on that and start making some moves. And I was lucky enough, I got to talk to some governments here. I think the next big move is, how do we really reduce this tech stuff and stop this kind of just onslaught of what's the next new thing? Put that in the classroom. That must be useful. Hopefully we make a move with this one.
Firstly, on that note, congrats. Anyone that can sit and write a book, and to do that is extraordinary. And I know that we've connected through the course of the year since April, and it was been in between book season and writing this chapter. And sorry, I'll get to you. I've just got to finish your chapter. A couple of us here, Craig and I, were unbelievably lucky, and thank you for your confidence in sharing a couple of the draft early chapters. It was fabulous reading for us. Just for the listeners, give us a little bit of a snippet about some items that you cover and some fundamental themes around.
Chapter 1, we're going to look at the big myths behind EdTech. What are the learning myths that drive educational technology? Things they believe that are just blatantly false, that basically set them up for failure. So things like learners know best when it comes to learning, or education is inherently broken. These things that are driving their creations. But if you dig down, you're like, whoa, that's not right. So everything you do past here is going to be a little skewed. So that brings us into chapter 2, which is all the hard data, which says, look, it ain't working and it's not going to work. Chapter 3 then brings in the mechanisms. It's one thing to know the numbers. It's one thing to know why things are happening. And so that's where we really drill down into issues of transfer, multitasking, empathy, all that stuff. 4 is all the pushback, all the excuses you're going to get. How are our kids going to get a job if they don't know how to do AI? Says the guy who never was explicitly taught AI. Good work. So that's where you it's all the arguments you need to push back against the proponents. Then we go into smartphones, then we go into AI, and then we go into 3 chapters of what does this mean for parents? How can you specifically, what are some takeaways and practical advice for you? For teachers specifically in the classroom, and then for principals of schools to say, all right, you're leading a school. If we now know this about tech, what are some things you can do too? So I've tried to kind of reach that broadest audience. You want to hear something cool? So on the covers, you know how people put blurbs? I just got to share this story. So I've got a blurb from John Haidt and some academics on the back. I'm like, this is cool. I was teaching a couple of weeks ago, and I got a text in the middle while I'm teaching. So class is over. I go look at the text. Hi, this is Hugh Grant. I heard you're writing a book about EdTech. I would like to support you. I'm like, okay, sure. Hugh Grant. I'm like, yeah, go for it. I thought it was my brother. And he's like, no, this is genuinely Hugh Grant. I didn't know Hugh Grant, the actor, is very anti-EdTech. He's got 5 kids and he's been pushing back against this for a while. Somehow he found out I'm doing this book, so he wrote a blurb. So on the cover, I'm really attracting the 4 weddings and a funeral crowd with Hugh Grant supporting this. So there you go. It's more people are into this than I knew.
We can't wait to read the whole book, and that first little intro will be an additional piece that you didn't expect.
Something fun. Just get a random text one day, and now me and Hugh, we're like this.
Can't wait. Looking forward to that. Tell us about whole class instruction and where that sits. It's something that obviously is part of this notion around how to teach kids and differentiation versus whole class instruction in that sense and how that plays out. It's something that I know people grapple with everywhere. Talk to us about the benefit of whole class instruction and why that works.
There's 2 big mechanisms behind it, but I think I want to acknowledge just how absolutely difficult it is to do. Oddly enough, though, for as hard as it is to get 30 kids all on the same page at the same time, I would say that's still easier than trying to hit 30 kids individually at the same moment with their own style. So it's difficult, but I think the differentiation movement made things more difficult, oddly enough. But I come back to, look, there's 2 things. One is that there is a way to learn. And when pedagogy is aligned with content rather than learner, everyone learns better, even those who don't think they are learning better. And that's where the expertise of the teacher comes in, is we know pedagogy. We didn't spend years, decades of our life training to not know what's the right way to teach. So I think when we accept the class as a whole, we select the pedagogy that is best. Everyone benefits from that. Even the kids who think, oh, I'm not that kind of learner. Doesn't matter. Stick with me. And I think from the flip side, then what's going to start happening is you then start to develop empathy. And this is one of the videos I'm going to put out here in a little bit, is one of the biggest predictors of learning is the resonance between the student and the teacher. And I'm talking pure biological resonance between the heart, between the skin, between the brain. Cool. One of the next best predictors is peer-to-peer resonance, is how resonant are students with one another. When we pair up their resonance, we see anytime they start to synchronize, empathize, learning goes up as well. And the only way to ensure kids can reach that resonance with each other is if we're all doing the same thing at the same time. If you have 30 kids with 30 screens all being taught in different ways, an entire mechanism of learning that has been evolved just will no longer exist. But we do it all together, and 2 or 3 kids start to resonate with the teacher. 2 or more kids are now going to start to resonate with those kids. And then more are going to start to resonate with you're going to get this spread until everyone, you get that moment of the vibe. You've all felt this as a teacher when it's like, bam, everyone is here, everyone's hitting. It's not just you, it's all of you doing something similar with one common goal. So that's where I think, you've got big learning mechanisms that come in when we do things together rather than we think. And there's a thing, we were just talking about this, the Alpha School here in the US. That's that new school model where every kid gets their own 2-hour AI tutoring session. And then we're going to come together and do some skills training. It's just like, well, mate, lock a kid with a computer, they're going to learn something from the computer, but you're going to miss an entire aspect of human connection and understanding, which is the synchrony, the empathy between the learners and the teacher. Take that away, you're going to get some pretty shallow understanding there.
That's a great reminder. You did cover that in our podcast earlier this year around that synchrony. I think you gave that example of hundreds of people in a lecture theatre or at a movie, and I think you referenced their eyes were moving at the same time. So to take that a step further into the benefits of students learning the same thing at the same time and then being able to relate those topics and all that are part of those is a really, really strong message.
And if you think, what is the purpose of school at some base level is to organize people around a common narrative, a common story. That's really, really difficult to do when I'm trying to cater to 30 different desires, 30 different preferences. But it's much easier to do when we all start to go one path and we all resonate. Because once you start resonating, once you hit that empathetic moment, you are now thinking in the exact same way. So there's no fear that when I say, like, and this is going to be a horrible example, but if I said the word Frankenstein, you could assume 10 people are going to think 10 different things. Some are going to think the big tall thing with bolts. Some are going to think the Frankenstein from like the comedy Mel Brooks movie. Some are going to be thinking like some gothic Frankenstein. But if we're resonating, there is no doubt that all people are going to be thinking about the exact same Frankenstein because our brains are doing the exact same thing at that moment. So that's where we kind of get that unification of understanding, where we don't get 10 different interpretations of an idea. We get one unified interpretation. From that, we can now be creative, but at least we know the core is there with everyone.
And my mind went, as you said then, easiest a couple of times. It's not just about being easy, is it? It's about being able to then practice the whole thing of a whole class instruction. And as you've taught us and taught many thousands others, if we don't practice enough, we're not going to embed anything. So if we've got 30 people practicing all different stuff at all different time, it can be lost in terms of the opportunity to do that and to rehearse as a group or to recall as a group or whatever that might be as well. So,
and I think that's one of the benefits of these kind of new school models with the tech is it's like you're going to do 2 hours of straight drilling. Anyone who does 2 hours of straight drilling of anything, you're going to improve on it. I go back to the depth issues. Cool. Yeah, I can drill for 2 hours, stay focused for 2 hours, but what am I going to do with that information if I never have any chance to actually apply it, to now bounce it with somebody else to say, okay, we both get it one way. What if this guy says this? Now what? Haha. And you start to see all those mechanisms we say for going into deep 2, deep 3 kind of learning are just kind of lost when we say we're going for just nothing but you do your thing for 2 hours and then get out of here. So I don't know. Those models just kind of trip me up right now.
If you're listening and you've got our instructional model with you, just have a listen to that last 2 minutes from Jared and just think about which stage of our instructional model of those 4 steps fits in, because it's a beautiful reference point, Jared. And I'll just leave that there. But I think for our listeners in our schools that do have access to that, it's a little bit of a challenge, because I know some of our people in our schools have used these type of chats as part of their professional learning schedule with their school as well, and really dip into it and engage with what that might look like. So thanks again. Jared, April the 20th, 2026, almost a year to the date after you joined us the first year round. You're coming back. We're looking forward to having you online again, probably from the same location. And I know that our people in our schools will be thrilled to hear that.
Are you ready for this one? I'm going to be in Banff, Canada. Has everyone been to Banff yet? I looked it up online. Like, it is beautiful. So I'm going to be excited to be there, if so long as there's no snow. But that is so. Hopefully there'll be a better background. I'll try and get in front of a window with like a vista behind me.
Well, we know the challenges of tech, and you've noted them beautifully in the chapters in your book, no doubt. But we hope the tech works from Banff in Canada to beam you into Bendigo in Australia across all of the Sandhurst diocese. I'm sure it will.
Fingers crossed. And I can't wait. It'll be awesome. And I can't wait to see everyone again. And you guys will be so much further along your journey now. So it'll be really cool to revisit some ideas and see how they're resonating as things have changed over there.
Thanks, Jared. We always finish our podcast with the question, what matters most? I'll let you go wherever you like from the conversation today, or even to the specifics of your book. But a message for us today, what matters most from everything we've spoken about?
First thing that popped into my mind, this morning I just did the dedication for the book. And just as a bit of background, Bub is my wife, Azza is my daughter. And it's weird. I gave more thought to that than probably anything else I've written. And it says, to Bub, your love has made this possible. To Azza, your love makes this meaningful. And I think the most important thing is to remember there's a reason we're doing this. We're all adults. We're all grown. We're all old. And I think us supporting each other makes this kind of learning possible, makes it so we can learn new things, explore new avenues of thinking. But our kids make this stuff meaningful. At the end of the day, keep coming back to, I'm doing this because I want a better world for my baby girl. I want a better opportunities and chances for my kids to actually engage with this world in a way that's agentic rather than simply passive. I don't want a consumer baby. I want a builder baby. And I think what matters most for me, and hopefully we can keep coming back to that as teachers and just keep remembering, hey, no matter how deep we get, the meaning comes from the kids. And if we just keep them in mind, we can put through any struggle we need to get through.
Beautiful words, Jared, and all the best to you and your family. I know that same sentiment is shared by our teachers in our classroom. Someone said the other day, what are you most proud of in terms of this work? And I think it's the remarkable intent and endeavour of our teachers to care unbelievably for our kids in terms of their learning, their outcomes and their success. And I know that, of course, spills into their family homes and from their families first and foremost. So a beautiful message as we round today out. Thanks so much for joining us a second time on Magnify Matters.
Thank you. We'll say season 3. I'll be back again.
Well, you've locked in now. Well done. See you later.
See you.
That's it for this episode of Magnify Matters. Make sure to follow the show and share it with someone who cares about great teaching and learning. You can also leave a review or connect with us online at Catholic Education Sandhurst. Until next time, stay with us as we magnify what truly matters.